The bearish divergences that we were looking at last week are now starting to play out, and it's a very difficult market for altcoin holders. In today's show, we'll discuss the only coins that I'd really be looking at, what you should hold, what you should fold on, and where you should run, right? So smash the like button, hit the bell notification, and subscribe to the channel. We can have a look straight away at a lot of the charts at Bitcoin coming down off of some key levels, massive drop-offs in volume, and therefore that was one of the warning signals. Is this a shakeout, right? Is prices going to, or are prices going to bounce, reclaim some key levels and run again? Or are we actually going to start to mark down? I think very, very important questions. We do lead into another big week next week, right? So we need to round off this week. This is also looking at in the next 2 weeks, the monthly close, which is going to drive a lot of factors, but we'll revisit that when necessary. Price is down pretty heavily over here. If you look on the weekly scale, almost all the altcoins over here in the top 100 are red. If we go to 100 to 200, also same thing, red. 201 to 300, red. 300 to 400, and you guys get the picture. Basically like picking a needle in a haystack, which is why you want to be very selective if you are looking into certain altcoins. So liquidations did rise. We spoke about this. Anytime that you hover underneath around that 150 million in terms of liquidations, it tells you that there is probably a little bit of a move that's going to be set up. And in this instance, it was the longs once again getting a little bit wrecked over there with 400 million. Majority of the liquidations on the long side, shaking out long traders. You have a little bit of a discrepancy over here with 48.85 on the long side, 51.15 on the short side. Remember, these things do like to snap back into balance, which means that in the short term, you could see a little bit of a spike towards the upside, catching some of those underside resistances, and then you can load up for the next move. Daily exchange volume still coming down, actually marking down more aggressively over here, and I really think this is the main reason why price will be retracing, where we have the triple bearish divergence with price putting in higher highs, and the momentum oscillator being the RSI putting in lower highs. So two confirmed drives. Will we get a third drive? In order to get the third drive, you would need price to actually move all the way up to about $125,000, $130,000, and you'd need to break that level. Now, no guarantee that that does happen. You'd need to see, therefore, something like that to give triple bearish divergence. All that this really means is that this is really a zone that you need to be careful. So although if price can break into the party zone, into the yellow box, that's where we expect Bitcoin dominance to break down if Bitcoin ranges over here. And that's where your altcoin party begins. But until then, you have to be really, really cautious with the RSI trend lines getting a little bit more aggressive. So we warned of that, right? As price was coming into there, we did warn of that. That was a big level you needed to see break, and it couldn't. It rejected, and consequently, you do have price also rejecting. It's still range bound, but nevertheless, you have to still consider that a rejection. And if it loses that, then you're going in for a much deeper correction. If you lose the low that occurred on Monday, the 2nd of June, that particular week. So we also spoke about yesterday losing the 3 and 9 moving average, which means you could be looking at a reversion all the way back down to the 30. That's as low as $95,000. Yesterday's show is still very relevant on Bitcoin, but I'll just speed through it for those that aren't familiar. We have this parallel channel. There's your mid-level, so a little bit of support coming in just under $100,000, but it depends how quick price can snap back. If you look at ETH, same thing, rolling over, coming back towards the 30, which is at $2,268 is going to be your next major support. And if you lose that, the very, very strong demand zone is a full retrace, at which point you've then printed your Bart Simpson pattern, right? It looks like Bart Simpson's head over here, big move up, hairline over there, and then drops back down. So there would be the eyes. There we go. There's the eyes. There's the mouth. You're dropping back down, playing out the Bart Simpson pattern. All right. Bitcoin over here, that's what we spoke about. Low volume, potentially confirming the Wyckoff distribution schematic. Again, won't spend too much time on this, but so far it's looking like supply is in control. Supply being in control means that bears are in control, and even yesterday's move up started to look promising, but straight rejection from the very, very key level, that being the yellow line at 106,145. Anything below that, we said, is meant to be taken very cautiously on the bullish side and leaning more bearish. Anything above that, and you can say that bulls are maybe printing a high low and reclaiming some key levels. So upthrust after distribution all the way at the top of the range, the retest on lower volume validates the Wyckoff distribution, and now starting to break down. If this is going to play out well, you'd expect it to gain speed and momentum moving into the next phase, which is going to be phase D, right? Transitioning from phase C into phase D, you would expect that marks down much quicker leading into the next 2 weeks. But we'll cross that road when we get there. The first and foremost thing that I'd want to see is the reaction if you do sweep down below $100,000. Can you reclaim some of those key levels? Because there is a lot of pressure for the bulls. You've now got your first candle close below the 50 EMA. And we said as soon as you start to see that, it's going to increase the chances that this could start to roll over very, very, very quickly, right? So price below the pivot level as well, the yellow line, just under $105,000. As long as the price is below that, your RSI will continue to roll over and trend towards the downside on the daily time frame. Historically, we've had a look at the 50 level and the importance and significance of that being 50% of the range for the RSI level, which is ultimately, let's just make it nice and big over here. Can I even size that up? There we go. We'll make it as big as possible in the middle so you can see it. That has been a significant level for the RSI, and right now you're losing that. So if bulls were in control, you typically see that they defend the RSI at the 50 level. If they start to lose that, it means that you could easily start to drop a lot quicker, which makes sense when you're losing that 50 following a very, very, very significant break of a strong uptrend, which was this, right? Strong uptrend did get broken, excuse my English there, and prices below the 9 and the 18 EMA rolling over, and that's going to add pressure if that crosses the 50. So food for thought, something to look at. You can see it over here, right? The previous times that you lost the 9 and the 18 exponential, which is the yellow and the pink one, as soon as that crosses over the red, you do start to get those aggressive moves towards the downside. Look over here, when it recaptures it and that 9 and the 18 cross above the 50, so yellow and pink above the 50 red, then you start to get your aggressive move towards the upside. So now in that environment where you've started to close candles below, so it can turn south very, very, very quickly, right? You have to be aware of that. And we're coming off of low volatility. We spoke about waiting for the next big move, right? You need to be very, very, very cautious over here on the long side, at least in my opinion. Right now, you are coming into resistance for the USDT dominance. You can see the important SR flip, previous support, resistance, resistance, resistance. So if you can reject from here, which now you're starting to test this level multiple times and even grind into it, which means if you do reject, you need to see the rejection happen very soon, as in over the course of this weekend. This would need to start to rapidly drop towards the downside to keep the hope alive for what would be a bearish pattern, which is going to be, of course, this is your bear flag for USDT dominance. If this breaks down, crypto goes up, Bitcoin goes up, everything does well. But if this can recapture this level over here, that's going to look dangerous for the market. So a lot of mixed signals between the stochastic RSI, definitely one of my least favorite indicators, but nevertheless, we can still have a look at it. On a weekly scale, it's only just turning up, right? Which is why it's important to focus on this reclaim. If those low time frames reclaim, it could very, very, very easily get this moving aggressively towards the upside with a lot of momentum still. So 5-day also riding it towards the upside. Daily, however, is hovering at the top. So if that starts to turn over, that's going to be at least your hope strategy, right? Your hope strategy is that it rejects with the SR flip and then stochastic RSI does come down. So you need to wait for that. You can look on the lower time frames. We were expecting that price would eventually revisit this. And again, your trap scenario for if this is a shakeout in the USD pairs, so Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, etc., well, then you would need this to be the fake out, right? The fake out would have to look something like this, spike above, and basically then drop it hard like that, right? So this is your symmetrical triangle. Right now, you're breaking out of the symmetrical triangle towards the upside. Take it seriously, right? Take it seriously, the breakout, until such time as it gets back inside. If it gets back inside, then you say, okay, great. Now we have confirmation that was in fact a fake breakout for the USDT dominance, which means that it was a fake shakeout for any coin that's losing support, which would then reclaim the key levels. So remember, the numbers that you're looking at for things like Bitcoin would be if this is the fake out. And again, that's a big if. We have to put a question mark there. Take it seriously until it gets back inside. If it is the fake out, then Bitcoin would probably drop down towards $100,000 and then sweep it and then reclaim $100,000. And that becomes your deviation and you're long on Bitcoin looking at higher prices. But until then, take it seriously. Take this breakout seriously. If this breakout does flip into support over here and continue to mark up, Bitcoin probably drops below $100,000 and starts to go much lower, which is why you need to be careful. And I know a lot of people are heavily locked in on the altcoins. If you go over here and you vote, how many altcoins do you currently hold? 0, 15% of you said that. 1 to 5, 37% of you hold a bunch of altcoins, and 20% of you hold 5 to 10. 28% of you are holding, more than 28%. So that basically means 85% of you are holding altcoins, which means, of course, there will be a little bit of pain. Okay, cool. We'll get into, I saw 𝗦𝗏𝗢𝗔𝗧𝗨𝗥𝗘𝗏. Yes, we'll bring that up. We'll talk a little bit about that one as well today. So if you want more information, by the way, guys, on the super low time frame things and what's happening in terms of the CVDs and the flows, remember, Whale Room, we have an assortment of different traders over there, which are guiding you along the way. We have scalp traders. We have all sorts of traders constantly making profits, swing traders, psychology traders, all sorts of different things over there. Jump into Whale Room if you want a community to ride the journey with, right? Liquidation levels. So there are now more liquidations on the upside there. It's really starting to build momentum over here for Bitcoin. That's around $107,000. That would be your scenario if you do actually fake out over here on USDT dominance, break back into the trading range. That will lead to a pretty aggressive move towards the downside, which is probably where Bitcoin does then run quickly. Remember, as you get later and later into the market cycle, the market becomes more and more emotional. So they're much quicker to jump out of positions and much quicker to jump back in when it starts to pivot towards the other direction. And that's what creates these absolute wild swings. The lesson is decrease your risk, decrease your leverage, decrease your position size. Otherwise, you're going to get absolutely wrecked, right? You're just going to chop your account down to 0. So please do be careful with that. ETH liquidations also is building over there at about 2,500. So that's your short squeeze analogy. But it is looking scary in the sense that you've now closed the candle below. Now you can make the argument that, maybe this is still a little bit of a range that's forming over here. Maybe you want to treat that as a horizontal range for the ETH BTC chart, but I don't like to move things around too much, which means that I would have to consider that as a significant break, especially when you look at the RSI, very similar to what I just mentioned, defending that 50 level, which is the yellow line over here, or yellow box. That's pretty important. You want to see that RSI hold that to show that there's still strength. This was your fake out. If you look at the RSI, faking out the trend line, failing at the 50, breaking back down and still riding that RSI towards the downside on ETH BTC, which means that altcoins will suffer. And there again is your Bart-Simpson pattern, which could, again, I'm not saying it will, but it could play out. That could easily lead to distribution. Bart-Simpson on ETH BTC chart. Maybe we should do it this way, right? A little bit of a sad face over there. So you do need to be careful. Right. Caution is warranted at these levels. And here's your total 3 measured against Bitcoin, still just grinding down, grinding. We covered this a lot. Yesterday, it's getting closer, 5%, 6% away from hitting the next support level. But will it bounce? That's the question. Or is it just going to capitulate straight through? I would say that if the geopolitical tensions rise, oil breaks out and starts to clear the resistance level that it's currently caught at, that's probably your signal that the market enters into a bit more of a panic state. And then you see Bitcoin dropping at least into a fearful environment, which means that people dump their altcoins even quicker. So you need to be careful. Okay, cool. Let's just see. I'm not sure what this question is, just from a review. I know it becomes more emotional, but what is your prediction? Oh, prediction. It's hard to say. Prediction would be that we'd probably have a little bit of a drop still. Sweep. There's going to be a risky environment now for about 2 weeks and then reevaluate. I don't like to think, months and months and months ahead. If you base your predictions on the timing cycles, well, the timing cycle would suggest that the cycle top should have come in between May and October of 2025. We, of course, already in June, with the base case being September, October, if you want to nail it down to a more precise point in time. September, October. I don't think that we've seen things go off the charts in terms of metrics yet, like in terms of a very, very heated environment, but also we're in a different economic environment where there's potential for stagflation. So stagflation changes things. Like crypto hasn't been in an environment of stagflation before, and therefore you have to treat things independently with each individual chart at a time, right? So you need to look at Bitcoin if you're trading Bitcoin. You need to look at ETH independently if you're trading ETH, and then just take it one step at a time. And that's why I've explicitly said I prefer to take a more trader's approach to the market for the rest of this crypto cycle. We study the timing and we look at the timing of the markets, and it got to a point where I said, well, I can confidently say at least 70% of this bull run is over, and therefore I don't want to be playing a gambler's game for the last 30%. So I'd rather be an in-out trader, right? Take the best trade and move on, as opposed to have a hodl strategy like I would early in the cycle, the beginning of the cycle, where it's clearly obvious that you're coming into the end of a bear market and potentially the start of a bull market. I have no problem being a major holder there, right? Is James winning? I doubt it. I mean, he can't, right? The only way he can win now is if he makes more than $100 million. So otherwise, he's not winning. All right, let's continue. So we can look at the ETH BTC valuations. We can look at Bitcoin as the standard and measure everything against Bitcoin. And then you can always ask yourself that question, right? Is your altcoin performing or not? Is it performing against Bitcoin? He has XRP against BTC. Well, not really. It had a short stint over there, but then more recently, you can see this has just been downtrending. So again, we won't go through every single thing over here. Here's your Solana against Bitcoin. The point over here is that you want to take these things into consideration if you are that type of person that is a buy and hold individual that's going to buy something and you just want to hold it for months and months. You need to know the direction of the altcoin versus Bitcoin over time, and that's down. Solana is down against Bitcoin. We can have a look at a couple of others. Hype would be one that's probably going to be up against Bitcoin. So there it is. Hype against Bitcoin ever since March. Put in a big move, but you want to pay attention as soon as that structure breaks, right? As soon as you start to take out some key levels, which I believe this now recently has put in a new low. If this sets in a lower high, so hype bounces against Bitcoin and puts in a lower high over here, that could be your indication that there's a potential shift in the trend and it's beginning to roll over. So do look out for that. Let's see some other ones over here. Sui, which was once really performing super well. Look at these massive legs up and then big legs down, right? So basically it's showing you that you want to exit back into Bitcoin as quick as possible when these trends begin to reverse. Another big move up over here recently in over the course of May, basically bleeding and giving up almost all of that. Look at that. All right. So what other ones do we have over here that historically have been pretty good? Look at Link over time, right? Link is probably a good thing to look at over time as something to study, because it was once a coin that was as hyped as Solana, as hyped as Sui, Hyperliquid, etc., and huge move up. And ever since then, look at that. If you just highlight since the downtrend started, it's been years and years and years of Chainlink, which is an Oracle solution that does amazing things and is integrated with almost every single project out there, but straight down, right? Straight down. So a lot of the altcoin sector is extremely, extremely short-lived. Tau, another coin that has a lot of promise, fundamentally, tying in with AI, some nice moves up, straight down, big move up, straight down. Overall, it's like very risky, right? It shows you that this is really just a trader's market when it comes to playing the altcoin sector. Let's have a look if there's any other ones that are pretty good. I know one of you requested 𝗡𝗡. So 𝗡𝗡, when it's risk on, will definitely outperform Bitcoin. As soon as it's risk off, it's going to start to bleed. If you got into 𝗡𝗡 in, it's an initial launch, like within the first few weeks, then of course, yes, you'll do very, 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 very well. But if you didn't, well, then it's going to bleed out. So if you can catch one of those meme coins before it breaks out into, reaches like escape velocity where it breaks that 100 million billion mark, if you can get something that's got product market fit and has the potential, then it's worth it, right? Then you can just continue to hold that position. Otherwise, if you're getting in when it's over $1 billion, you have to treat it as a trader, right? Okay, so we can have a look at some of the coins. Again, ETH on the USD pair, very similar to what I just showed on the ETH BTC pair, starting to break that. It's closed the candle below. You really just have to look at Bitcoin and say, well, if Bitcoin is going to draw down and sweep lower, then probably this is going to do exactly the same thing. XRP, still at key support over here, but is it going to defy the odds of Bitcoin, or is it going to just continue to mark down towards the next support levels? It's probably going to mark down. Solana also, if that's a confirmed local top, this is easily coming back down to 120 and possibly even sweeping below that. Sui, also losing that key 50% level. At this point, you have to view that this might come all the way back down to 220. So I'm not being the bearer of great news over here. You need the market to shift gears very soon. Unfortunately, I can't control the market. I'm just giving you the most likely direction, and the most likely direction, even on Sonic, is still down. Now, this could put in a deeper power of 3. What is a power of 3? A power of 3, just quickly for those of you that don't know, is when you see price respecting a trading range for quite a while, then you call that the accumulation, reaccumulation. And then there's usually this manipulation phase where it drops down further and then it breaks back in. Now, the goal is not to necessarily try and buy in that phase, but rather to wait for the deviation or the manipulation phase to complete and price to break back into the trading range, which would be somewhere around this region, 40. Then you look for expansion higher, where usually price will trade way beyond the top of the range high for the reaccumulation range. So Sonic, also previously called Phantom, something extremely fundamentally strong, but yeah, is it going to come back? We have to see, right? We have to see. I think if Bitcoin dominance breaks down, then absolutely. Goku and Nobody. Yeah, we can have a look at those. I did want to talk about Nobody because it has approached the level that we had been looking at as a key area. This, I told you when it came towards the purple box, I would personally be buying small amounts, DCAing in, which is currently the plan. So in terms of product market fit, I had to look a little bit deeper into the project and why I think it has product market fit. And if there is a meme season, and if Bitcoin dominance breaks down, this could do very, very, very well. Now, first, let's just talk about the technicals. The technicals is coming into a key horizontal support. This is going to be a clear psychological level in terms of market cap as well. Generally, between that 10 and 15 million is where you see if there's conviction in the coin and the early buyers are going to continue to hodl. Usually they would have dumped by now and you would see a more aggressive move towards the downside. So I'm inclined to believe even if this does bleed down a little bit further, they're probably going to continue to defend at least around that $10 million mark. And that becomes a high value area to buy as opposed to buying into the hype when it was up here, right? If it is going to reach that escape velocity. So again, back to the TA. We have the main downtrend over here, and then there's a lighter one that I've drawn in, right? This is a pretty aggressive move. Usually following those aggressive moves, you see quite substantial snapback. So you can either wait for the snapback and then the higher low, or you could just DCA in small amounts if you want exposure. Now, why do they have product market fit? They are the same team essentially behind Popcat and FWOG. And we saw that those coins went to $1 billion plus, right? Huge multiples. So if you can pick this up between 10 and 15 million market cap, which is where it's currently at, 150 million gives you a 10x. It's going to be very hard to get a 10x in many other things. And again, now I'm not suggesting that anybody would sell the farm for something like this, but I think it's one of the ones to at least consider. I had to look a little bit further as well into the project just before the show started, because I saw the comments before that you guys wanted this. It's from a Brazilian animator who's got some mega reach, right? I'll show you some of the things that he's done. But they've been in trains. Yeah, it is. There you go. In train stations in terms of art and marketing, I think it's pretty big. They have a huge social media. 7.7 million. I went to actually go verify it on Instagram. 7.7 million followers over here and 22 million on TikTok. So it's not really a Mickey Mouse small thing by the sounds of things. And they're also not shilling the token, which is a good thing, right? If you go through any of these Instagram posts over here, they're not shilling the token. They're just simply posting the artwork and trying to create viral content. So yeah, I mean, I think that in terms of some of the other coins that have done very, very well, you had Chill Guy. That obviously became a meme sensation. I think you can categorize this in a similar area, right? As a similar opportunity when it comes to meme coins. So yeah, check it out. Up to you guys. Anyway, we can go back into some of the other chart requests over here. Okay, let's go to, we can have a look at some of the other meme coins as well. Let's have a look at Fartcoin. Okay, Fartcoin now approaching super key level over here. coming all the way back down to that bounce area. This was the main area of interest. I always prefer horizontals, even if it does now break this trend line over here, which I must say, I don't give it high odds of bouncing. If I look at Altcoin, based on the way the candle is closed into that trend line, I give this high probability that this is going to break through. So mentally prepare for that. If you were looking to buy the dip, I do still think that the best area of interest is going to be over here, about 73 into that SR flip region. You may even drop slightly below that. You may see something like this, maybe a small little reaction, and then it's probably going to go through, right? There you go, something like that. That's what I'd be looking at. That's going to be probably a better opportunity for something like Altcoin. Just the reason that I say that I think it'll probably break is if it was going to bounce, I would have wanted to see a candle close a little bit higher up, somewhere around there yesterday. But it closed pretty low. If you look over there, closed pretty low, showing that, yes, people were looking at the trend line and people were trading the trend line. That's why you got a little reaction. But those guys are so close to being underwater, and price hanging around here, not moving quickly out of there with momentum, means that this could easily just do that. And it probably will. SPX 6900, one of the top coins, we'll have a look at that. Potential for the cup and handle. So I said, don't chase price. Price came into here, rejected. If this is our last drawing at least, so let's just delete that to clean things up a bit. Go back over there. Okay, let's clean that up. And we will have a look just in terms of the horizontals. So again, I would mostly look at Bitcoin as the key indication of where things are going to go next. But the most obvious SR flip region for me is going to be around this 89 cents. So if you can see this defending 89 cents, you might get one or two little wicks through, and then it can start to print a little bit of a handle, which means reaccumulation like that. Then you have this beautiful cup and handle. Then you can say, now this thing's going to send. So from that level, if it does actually play out the cup and handle for SPX 6900, which is also one of your most promising memes, 235%. If we look at something like this, like Nobody Sausage, and you get your average entry down to about 11, well, where's that going to take you? 11 up to the highs over there, 500%. That's a 5x. And I have targets much higher based on some fib extensions and some Elliott wave counts. All right. Cool. Let me know, guys. Let me know in the comments what else you're looking at. I do appreciate you guys joining. I know that the market is mostly boring, but I am trying to be here for you as many days as possible, at least one day a week that I take off. But I'm trying to be here for you to guide you. So smash the like button, right? Smash the like button over there. Okay, let's see. Let's have a look at a couple of the other coins, see what's going on over here. Back to our list. Okay, Bonk. How's Bonk doing? It was also not bad previously. That's why I've kept it on this list. So major support for Bonk coming in over here at 1045. Expect that these things are heavy. They're coming down, guys. Expect that some of these memes could drop another 20-30%. It's really possible. They move with high velocity, right? So strong moves down, even bigger moves towards the upside when it does pump. But this is going to be a big, important SR flip zone. All right. So yeah, trying to guide you to Valhalla. The guiding to Valhalla is protect your USDT capital and think in Bitcoin terms, right? And use altcoins as short-term vehicles to get to your destination, right? It's quick trades in and out. All right. Should you hold spot or dump? This completely depends on when you got into the market, how much you have in, what your long-term strategy is. So it's very difficult for me to answer that. I've said what I've done. My approach is to, and we'll go back to this chart over here. You know, my approach is to look at this. Let's go return on investment from cycle bottom. This has been my approach. My approach was to be, if you look at the purple line flashing on and off the screen. So my approach was, when we're in that beginning phase over here, to aggressively enter the market with absolutely no fear and have maximum exposure, as little money in stable coins as possible, basically 100% long all the way. And then my approach was, as soon as we started to approach this 800-day mark, somewhere around there, I wanted to take a lot of the chips off the table, and I wanted to reposition more into a trader's mindset. So meaning I'm not a hodler, right? I'm not a hodler, barring a small percentage and a few coins that I am holding. So the things that I mentioned, like now, those I'll hold. I'll give it a little bit of a chance, but it's a minuscule part of my overall portfolio. Okay, so this part for this last leg, and the reason why is because we don't know. You don't know, is this, I lean towards that this is probably going to drag on as a very long cycle. It's going to be a right translated cycle. And, you know, the most likely top for the cycle is somewhere towards the end of the year. But with that being said, I understand that markets can surprise you, and things like stagflation can come in now all of a sudden, and geopolitical tensions can rise, and this can easily just be the end of the cycle and it can roll over. And therefore, I have to be really, really careful with my capital. Look, it all depends, right? It all depends on how quick you can replenish what you had in the market. If you're talking millions and millions of dollars, that could take you a lifetime to make back. So yes, then you can't be a hodler with that kind of capital. But if you're talking about, you know, a few $1,000s, most people can just get a job and replace that in a couple of weeks to months. They can earn that few thousand back and then replace that. Then the risk to reward, then you can just be a hodler, right? It is the opportunity cost of you missing out on a big move might not be worth leaving the market. So you need to think about things like that. Maybe BTC dominance never tops the cycle. Of course, well, since you have Michael Saylor strapped to the horns of a bull, I suppose that you probably would be very, very happy with that and subscribe to that in your profile picture over there. But look, it's unlikely. Charts very rarely just go up forever. I see this as a very significant point to try and get through. At the least, there will probably be some sort of a pullback from the 66 to 69%. But over, you're talking decades, of course, like just Bitcoin is king. Over decades, Bitcoin is king, unless something drastic changes. We always have to reevaluate. Could this trade through that level and all the way to the highs over here at 74, 75%? Yeah, that's also possible. But the technicals I would expect would reject that. Either from the pink box, you'd get a meaningful rejection, or if not, you'd consolidate and then you'd run up to 74 and then putting a meaningful correction at the very, very least, and then you could reaccumulate, right? So yeah, that's my thoughts. Alrighty. Yeah, guys, links are in the description below. If you don't follow me on Instagram as well, maybe I can get as many followers as 𝗦𝗏𝗢𝗍𝗍. So use the link over there. If you're not already following me, feel free. There is a link in the description below if you want to see what goes on in my day-to-day life. And other than that, that is pretty much it from me. I think that we've had a good wrap up today. Stay safe out there. I'll see you guys all on the next one. Have a good day, and I will see you soon. Cheers for now.